A lot of people have including Christians, have very distorted pictures of God. And I think this causes all kinds of problems. You have a distorted picture of God. And it can come about from just pure ignorance or from misunderstandings based on certain passages of scriptures, or believing certain passages but ignoring other ones. You get a distorted picture of who God is. Or some people just have really distorted pictures of God because they've had bad experiences in various church groups or with religious leaders or with their parents. And maybe the most damaging thing of all is if there's hypocrisy. I remember someone telling me once, they said you can mess up a lot of things in life as a Christian parents, and your kids will recover. But one thing is really hard to recover from is hypocrisy. And that stuck with me. So, if you make a mistake and you admit it to your children, okay, they're pretty resilient. They'll forgive you and they'll move on. They won't hold it against it. But if you're a religious hypocrite, if you're saying one thing spiritually and living someplace some other way, I said that really messes children up. So, but a lot of people have been in groups where they've seen hypocrisy or corruption, bad experience with church leaders. That colors their view of God and twists the view of God. Unfortunately, some people also have gotten a very distorted view of God from Christian art, from well-meaning Christian art. I grew up Roman Catholic, and at one point in time, I went into the Sistine Chapel. I went to Rome and went to the Sistine Chapel and looked up, and there's the famous Michelangelo painting of, there's this old man stretching out his finger, and he's touching Adam's finger, and presumably giving him life or something. So it's most famous Christian work of art in the whole world. Complete violation of the second command. God says, don't make any images. God was insistent in the second command. First commandment is have no other gods before me. The second commandment is don't make any images of anything in heaven above or on earth beneath. Don't portray me as an image. And so here Michelangelo does it in the form of a man, and he uses, I believe he used a statue of Zeus as his model for this. So it's a horrific thing. And so, but this whole idea, when they say, well, how many fingers does God have? Some people would flash on the image of the Sistine Chapel, where, let's see, I think he's got 2 hands. Must have 10 fingers. But they see God as an old man with a white beard, and who's reaching his hand out. So it's really does a lot of damage. This is not who God is at all. And I was listening to a message by a Christian leader recently who was making an observation. He said, we're living in an age where there's really very little, and it seems like less and less knowledge of God in the culture in general. He's talking about the culture in the United States, is that we're losing this sense of who God is, and as a result, there's all kinds of disorder and depravity and upheaval and violence and immorality that's just spreading and multiplying throughout the culture. He's saying that the root problem is there's a lack of knowledge of God. People have lost the knowledge of God, and ignorance of God is growing more rapidly than knowledge of God is in the age that we're in. The duty of man is, I've seen one description of this, is to know, love, and serve God. And it's very hard to love and serve God if you don't know God. First of all, it's hard to love somebody that you don't know. And hopefully, as you know someone better and better over time, there's the capacity to love them more deeply. So I think it's really important for us to want to know who God is. I think of first for unbelievers, and then second of all for believers, to the importance of knowing God and seeking God. Acts chapter 17, let's turn there. When Paul is preaching the gospel to the Gentiles, he goes through the city and sees the objects of worship and all the temples and statues and everything else in the city. And he says, I even found an altar with the inscription to the unknown God. And this is in verse 23. It says, therefore, the one whom you worship without knowing, him I've proclaimed to you. God who made the world and everything in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands, nor is he worshipped with men's hands as though he needed anything, since he gives to all life and breath and all things. And he's made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings. So they should seek the Lord in hope that they might grope for him and find him, though he's not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. So he says there, God, the reason God created us, the reason God put people on the face of the earth, all over the earth, verse 27, so men should seek the Lord in the hope they might grope for him and find him, though he's not far from each of us. This is the picture. God is near. He's close. He put us here that we can seek and find God. That's what we're here for. That's what he says. He said, this is the God you don't know, and I want to explain to you who he is. This is why people exist in the earth in the first place, is to seek and to find God, for no other reason than that. We're not here to eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And then, so this is for the unbelievers, saying that you're here to seek God. And then to the believers, I think of Hebrews chapter 11. This is the great chapter on faith. And Hebrews writer, he's writing this to Christians to talk about the importance of persevering in the faith. So this is written to Christians. That's the audience here. And talking about all different aspects of faith. That faith is believing in something you can't see. Faith is obedience. Faith is perseverance. And illustrated by the examples of the great heroes of faith in the Old Testament. In Hebrews 11, verse 5, it says, by faith Enoch was taken away, so he did not see death, and he was not found because God had taken him. For before he was taken, he had this testimony that he pleased God. But without faith, it's impossible to please him. For he who comes to God must believe he is, and that he is the rewarder of those who diligently seek him. So this is written to Christians saying, God rewards those who diligently seek him. So for those who don't believe in God, we're all put here to seek God in the first place. And God's the great blessing. God is a rewarder of those who earnestly seek him. So I ask Christians, are you seeking God? Are you still seeking God, or you have attitude, well, I found God, I kind of know who he is, and Jesus is his son, that's it? Or are you seeking to know who God is? You're seeking to know the character of God. I stumble in asking the question about this finger of God. It really opened my mind up. One of the people who commented on this was Novatian. Novatian was an elder in the church in Rome right around in the 250s, and he's explaining who God is and the power of God and the misconceptions of God. And he's talking about the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. A lot of times when early Christian writers are talking about the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, they're trying to correct some heresy that's floating around in the church at the time. But what really stunned me was the depth of the power of his understanding of who the Father is from all the scriptures. And he addresses this question about the human attributes of God that we see in the scriptures. Not only the physical things, the finger, the eye, the ear, the face, the arm stuff, but he also addresses things like God hearing, seeing, and smelling things, and also characteristics of God that are similar to human traits, like God being angry or God hating something or someone. So he talks about all these human-like characteristics of God and how we're supposed to understand and process all this. And he explained it so much more powerfully than I could, that I want to share his insights because I think they're really helpful for us today. If we have a clear idea of who God is, we can better love him and serve him. And also it will change, you tend to become like what you venerate in life. All right. I have we live in a 2-family house, and we have my daughter and her husband and their 2 sons, 2 little babies live downstairs. And the older of the 2 babies' name is Elijah. And so now that I'm pretty much retired from engineering, I'm working on the side of my house. I'm up on scaffolding, and I'm putting shingles up. So I'm banging thousands of nails in. I'm not, my son-in-law, when he helps me, he's got the pneumatic air gun, but I'm the old-fashioned guy with the hammer and nail. So I get a little workout in the process. So I'm up on the scaffolding, 3 levels high on the scaffolding, hammering in the side of the house where my grandson lives. And so whenever he sees me, he looks up at the house and he calls me Dita, and he says, bang, bang, because that's what, he goes like this, bang, bang, because he knows that that's what he associates me with, banging on the side of the house with a hammer. His father works in the construction business too. So he's got his father and his grandfather, both who live in the house, are banging on things. And so this week I noticed that his mother had gotten him a little plastic hammer. And guess what he was doing? All over the house. Bang, bang. And she said he'd get up early in the morning when it's still dark out, and he takes his hammer, he's banging on things. She says, until the sun comes out, you can only bang on soft things. You can bang on pillows, you can bang on couches, and then when the sun comes out, then you can bang on the walls and the door and everything else. So, because he looks up to me and he looks up to his father. So that's what he wants to do. He just loves construction stuff. He's got a little toy drill and he's got a hammer. He's bang all the time. That's what he's doing around the house. Every time it's easy, bang bang. So you tend to become like whatever it is you're looking up to in life. So if you have a clear picture of who God is, of the nature of God, the love of God, the patience of God, the willingness of God to forgive those who've sinned. If you have, that's who God is, and that's who I'm worshiping, you're going to tend to become more like that over time too. So it's a practical thing. The clearer picture you have of who God is, it's gonna like my little grandson, it's gonna affect how you live your day. All right. So Novation is talking about this. I want to read from what his view of God, which I thought was so powerful and so consistent with the scriptures, but he just said it in such a great way. So he's talking about the Father,